Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tom Greathouse. I am the music director here at Emmanuel. And this is our return of the organist who was here less than a year ago to dedicate this wonderful instrument that was donated to us by a dear friend, Dr. William Warden in Southern California. So we've enjoyed it, and people said, someone came in today that hadn't been here for a while and said, when did that organ get here? And I don't know, yesterday or 3 years ago, but it has been wonderful. Today, of course, is back Dr. Jan Kraybill from Kansas City, one of my most favorite organists, and she's going to wow us with a lot of holiday music, taking us all the way from Thanksgiving to Christmas. So everything in between. So here I will turn it over to Jan Kraybill.
So if you haven't noticed, we're at that time of year when time seems to rush by, and we just had that day of thanks, and then I don't know about you, but I got on a plane, said goodbye to my family and enjoy my house, but I got to leave, and I got on a plane and came here and spent yesterday getting to be reacquainted with this lovely instrument that has so many lovely sounds. So we're going to begin this recital today in the spirit of Thanksgiving with a song of thanksgiving and praise. And then we'll spend some time in Advent, and then we'll slam right into Christmas because that's what the calendar does too. And I hope along the way you find some tidings of comfort and joy. We start with howls. Thank you. It's said that great music sometimes comes out of great tragedy. And if you read in the program notes about Howell's life, you read that he had quite a challenging life, and yet he was able to write a piece like that, even after he'd lost a son at only 9 years old, even after he himself had struggled with a serious disease and undergone very experimental radiation therapy. He still is able to write praise like that. So we too can follow that example. It makes me breathless with wonder to play a piece like that. I love playing pieces like that. And hymns too can inspire us. And these next two pieces from very different time periods have inspired composers. People Look East is an Advent hymn. It's not in the hymnal that's in front of you, and so I just wanted to read the text of this hymn that comes from long ago, but it still speaks to us. People look east, the time is near of the crowning of the year. Make your house fair as you are able. Trim the hearth and set the table. People look east and sing today. Love, the guest, is on the way. The anticipation of the coming of Christ. The piece that I'm about to play, based on that hymn, was just composed earlier this year, and I got to help introduce it in some reading sessions earlier this summer by a contemporary composer named David Evan Thomas. And then following that, I'll play one of the most famous arrangements of an Advent hymn ever by Johann Sebastian Bach. And it has a funny title, Sleeper's Wake. So if you happen to be dozing off, this is for you. But it's from a biblical text that reminds us not to get complacent, that there is an important thing coming up, and that is the yearly reminder that Christ came and dwelt among us. And this hymn was written at a time of tragedy, too, happened to be written during a pandemic, a global pandemic. This was known as the plague, and it was written by a pastor named Philip Nicolai. And his town in Germany, by the time the plague was over half the town had died. And this Lutheran pastor presided over a lot of funerals, and living in the parsonage, his house overlooked the cemetery, so he was reminded daily of the tragedy. He presided over the funerals of relatives of his and close friends of his. He was always reminded of death. And yet, he was able to write a hymn of hope and joy. And in this hymn, in its original German, Sleeper's Wake, he made a tribute to one of his students who had died during the plague, and he included that student's initials as the first letter of each of the stanzas of the hymn. And so he didn't really tell anybody, he just included that tribute. I think that's kind of neat. And so the words of the hymn remind us to keep our lamps trimmed and burning, as the spiritual says, to always be ready for the coming light of Christ. And then kind of as maybe handing off that lantern of light and joy, handed it off to Johann Sebastian Bach, who wrote a cantata based on that hymn 150 years later. And then Bach hands it off to us. And we still sing that hymn. So in case you want to watch that text as I play it, after I play People Look East, I'll be playing Wachet auf. It's hymn number 62 in the hymnal that's in front of you. All right, so 2 Advent hymns. So George Frederick Handel was, of course, most famous, even during his lifetime, for composing this little ditty called Messiah. And he composed it, in 21 days, 14 days, something unbelievable. But he also was a wonderfully talented organist. He used to play the organ at St. Paul's Cathedral when it was new. Yeah, a long time ago. And he wasn't the organist at St. Paul's Cathedral. He would just show up to play. So he would show up after the services, and he would play. And he was a very popular guy, and he was a very good organist. And word spread that he would show up to play, and people would come to hear Handel practice. And pretty soon, the church hierarchy noticed that more people were showing up to hear Handel practice than were showing up to the services. And so in those days, you had to have people pump the bellows. So they would bribe the people pumping the bellows with bottles of wine. They would say, if you stop, we'll give you this. And you, as an organist, you are totally dependent on somebody supplying air for your instrument. Well, not here, but there. And so, yeah, Handel was kind of stymied from playing. Anyway, all that to say, Handel was very good. But despite that, his oratorios, Messiah was only one oratorio that he wrote. He wrote lots of oratorios, so things for choirs and soloists and organists, orchestras to play. And they were very popular for a while, and then, like all things, they kind of faded in popularity, and people were not showing up in the masses and hordes of crowds that they used to. And so Handel was trying to figure out a way to make them more popular so that more people would come and he would make more money again. And so he came upon this idea that since the orchestra was just sitting around during intermission, that perhaps the orchestra would accompany Handel himself playing the little tiny portative organ that was sitting there anyway. They could do that during intermission. And so they could advertise that Handel himself would be playing the organ and the orchestra could accompany him. Nobody records how the orchestra felt about this, but it did get people to come. And they were playing during intermission. And so it was intermission. But some people were interested in hearing Handel, and some people were interested in talking to their neighbor and admiring the finery that people were wearing, and, oh, that's a new fur coat, isn't it? And so I'm going to play one of these pieces that Handel played, and if you feel like talking to each other, I suppose you can do that. But I find it amazing that Handel was so astute as to come up with a new way to get people to come, and in doing so, he invented an entirely new art form, because an organ concerto did not exist before this point. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play all the parts. So a guy named Marcel Dupré, a very famous organist, French organist, figured out how he could enable all of us to play all the parts. So when you see my hands on the bottom keyboard, I'm playing the solo organ part, the part that Handel would have played. If you see my feet moving or my hands on either of the two other keyboards, I'm playing what the orchestra would have played. So it's a one-man show, or one-woman show here in this case. And you'll hear 3 of the 4 movements that this audience of Handel's time would have been hearing for the very first time. This is the concerto in F major. One of the great things about this organ is that you can visit sonically lots of different places. And so you might have noticed I've been pushing buttons on this little screen over here. That is accessing different sonic environments. And so these next three pieces will visit three different sonic environments in the form of three different Christmas carols. The first one, we will remember our brothers and sisters in Ukraine in this beloved Christmas carol that we know is Hark How the Bells, Sweet Silver Bells, all seem to say this Ukrainian bell carol. And this organ has a soundscape of bells that is unbelievable. So we have tinkly little bells, and we have chimes, and we have everything in between, and so you will hear almost them all. And then we'll hear another well-known carol arrangement by Johann Sebastian Bach, Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring, and we'll hear it in a soundscape that would have been familiar to him. And then we'll hear a French Noel. You'll read in your program notes how popular these were among French organists, and you'll hear a Noel from the king of the Noelists, and you'll hear the soundscape that would have been familiar to him. So how many of you had a pandemic project? I had quite a few. And one of them became an unintentional pandemic project because I needed a way to just comfort myself. And so I started playing the piano, and then I just started sharing that online, and people found it to be comforting. And so I suddenly became an arranger of hymns, sharing things online. And so you're about to share some of those things. So these are 4 Christmas hymns that I've arranged and never published, and some of them have appeared online and some of them have not. I just adore this time of year, and honestly, for this concert, the most challenging part was reducing it from a 6-hour concert to about an hour. So here are 4 of these. I'll tell you the hymn numbers as I go, so in case you want to think about the words that inspired me as I was writing these pieces, I'll let you know what those are. I've written short program notes so you can tell what was on my mind, especially the lullaby that this teenage immigrant mother sings to her baby Jesus. I love that scripture, and Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart. Can you imagine what was on Mary's mind at the birth of this child, and then all the stuff that happens to her right after that birth, and then, oh my gosh, her child's in danger and her life's in danger and they're running, and I mean, I just cannot imagine what was on this young teenage mother's mind. So I was thinking of her as she sang her lullaby. And then the last one, I honestly was thinking about Hark the Herald Angels, but I was thinking more about, are there angels now? Can we still say hark? Hark! The Herald Angels are singing. And one of my favorite new hymns is by a hymn author that recently passed away. Her name was Shirley Arena Murray. And here is my favorite hymn composed within the last, I don't know, probably 10 years. So this is what was on my mind. It's not published in your hymnal. It is this. No obvious angels sing through the night skies. No thunderstruck shepherds tell out their surprise. But Christmas comes into the here and the now through star-sighted people, the watchful and hopeful, who wake us to see a new world. Our angel potential is waiting to start. The Spirit will teach us the song of the heart, for Christmas comes into the here and the now through peacemaker people, the just and the gentle, the stars who will light the new world. Whoever will take it is given the role, the fruitful, the faithful, the joyous of soul. For Christmas comes into the here and the now when we are the angels who dream and deliver, who rise and create the new world. Sorry, it means a lot to me. We're the angels. Hark, the herald angels still sing. And all too soon for me, we come to the last piece on the concert. And I always offer this, and no one ever takes me up on it. I'll play the whole thing for you again. I really do have the best time performing and practicing. I had a great time yesterday. I practiced from, 9 in the morning until 7 at night. Those are the best days. Those are the best days for me. And for the people who were decorating the church while I practiced, I hope it was a good day for you too. I love doing what I do, and I'm so grateful that you shared this time with me. The phrase, "God rest you merry," has been around for a long time, and I hope that God rests you merry this season of the year. Tidings of comfort and joy are needed in our world these days. So if God rests you merry these days, I hope that then you spread that merry feeling and share it with other people. That's what I'm trying to do through the music that I make. So I hope that God has rested you merry through this music today. So, God rest you merry, gentlemen. And ladies too. All right, so just a little silent night to send you on your way. This was written by the American composer Samuel Barber. The melody is in the pedals. This is a transcription of an orchestral arrangement. And so it's intended to be very restful for you, and just know that it's not very restful for me. Because to be very graceful and very musical while you're playing a very soft, tender melody with your feet, which are not very graceful objects, you might have noticed, is not easy. So we'll see how it goes, but I hope that it's restful for you.